Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And in addition to Afghanistan, which is mostly what we've been talking about today, and I'm pretty sure is probably mostly what we're going to continue talking about for the next 2 hours. And by the way, I checked, Barbara Lee was the only person in the House of Representatives in 2001, in October of 2001, to vote against the authorization to use military force, which is what every president has used ever since 9/11 to justify, you know, military actions in half a dozen countries around the world or more, and needs to be taken down. That AUMF needs to be nuked. But anyhow, that's what's going on. If you're just tuning in, just to recap, obviously Kabul has fallen. What we have learned in the last few days, or what I learned from BBC reporting, I have not heard this much on the American media, but it's all over the international news, is that in 2019, when Donald Trump was president of the United States, looking at his reelection in 2020, this was pre-COVID, you'll recall, he wanted to be able to claim that he had ended the war in Afghanistan. He went to the Taliban. First, he went to Pakistan and said, please release this guy, this mullah, who is now the he is now the president of Afghanistan. He claimed that. His name is Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, or Baradar. So Pakistan let him out of jail at Donald Trump's request. And then Donald Trump later said, you know, had an actual phone conversation with this guy, half-hour phone conversation with this guy. And basically, we gave the Taliban, or Trump gave the Taliban everything they wanted. He gave them credibility. He invited them to Camp David. He ended up withdrawing from that, you know, undoing that invitation because it did not play well on the world stage. It was right before 9/11. This was August, I believe, of 2019. But he gave them essentially an unconditional surrender. He said that by May, the 1st of May of 2021, of this year, all U.S. forces would be out of Afghanistan. And the country will be yours, Mr. and Mrs. Mr. Taliban, that's all there is, Mr. Taliban. Country will be yours. That's what Donald Trump told them. And so what happened was and this was a year and a half ago, right? That almost 2 years ago, that was a cue to all of the Afghan soldiers that we were paying that something's coming down the road, you better get ready. The New York Times has a subhead today on their front page about how the U.S. intelligence and the U.S. military thought it would take 30 to 90 days for Kabul, for the whole Afghan government to fall. It took less than a week. Why? Because it really did take 30 to 90. Actually, it took about a year and a half. What happened was when Trump publicly announced, and by the way, Trump has now, you know, he's scrubbing this stuff off his website, and the RNC has already scrubbed his statements off their website, which is kind of mind-boggling when you think about it. But, you know, Trump came out and said, that's it, we are out of here. This is the statement from Donald Trump that has been scrubbed from his website. And this was a recent one. He said, I wish Joe Biden wouldn't use September 11 as the date to withdraw our troops from Afghanistan for two reasons. First, we can and should get out earlier. 19 years is enough. In fact, far too much and way too long. I made early withdrawal possible by already pulling much of our billions of dollars of equipment out and, more importantly, reducing our military presence to fewer than 2,000 troops from the 16,000 level that was there. Secondly, September 11 represents a very sad event and period for our country and should remain a day of reflection and remembrance honoring those great souls we lost. Getting out of Afghanistan is a wonderful and positive thing to do. I plan to withdraw on May 1st, and we should keep as close to that schedule as possible. This is something that Trump tweeted, a statement by Donald J. Trump earlier this year, after Biden became president. And now you've got, you know, these right-wingers just, you know, all over the place. The America First Policy Institute. This is a pro-Trump think tank that has popped up. And they're quoting the former Director of National Intelligence, John Ratcliffe, under Trump, basically blaming everything on Biden. They say President Trump personally engaged with Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, who led the Taliban delegation, and clearly laid out what would happen. They understood and respected this approach because we had established credible deterrence in the preceding year, which is why there was no U.S. soldiers killed in Afghanistan in the final 11 months we were in office. Well, there were no soldiers killed in Afghanistan because Trump cut a deal with the Taliban. He said, we'll give you the country if you'll just stop shooting at Americans. Make it look good for me. I'm up for re-election here. And what happened when Trump cut that deal, as the British Defense Secretary pointed out this morning on the BBC, what happened was that all across Afghanistan, Afghan soldiers who were getting a paycheck from the United States via the Afghan government, those 300,000, 350,000 plus soldiers, had been approached over the course of the previous year and a half since Trump cut that deal. Let's keep in mind, Joe Biden has only been in office, 7 months? They were approached by the Taliban all across the country who said, stay cool, keep pretending you're the Afghan military, keep taking that money from America, but there's going to be a day, it's going to be coming, probably in August of 2021, there's going to be a day when we rise up, and we're going to do it all across the country all at once. And then just lay down your arms, and we will not kill you and your families. Everything will be good. And the BBC is reporting this. I'm not hearing it on American media much. There's an occasional reference to it. But there's a reason why it only took a week for the entire country to collapse. What I don't understand, I genuinely don't understand, is how our Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, our Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, didn't know this. It should have been obvious. Donald Trump declared everybody's going to leave a year and a half ago. What he really was saying to the Afghan army was, nobody's going to have your back going forward. You are on your own. And here comes the Taliban. What are you going to do? Hey, we're going to get in with the Taliban. I mean, who wants to die? I really believe there's a lot of blame to go around here. And it's going to be very interesting to hear what President Biden has to say, an hour and a half, 2 hours from now. It's scheduled for around 3:30, actually, this afternoon. He's going to give a speech from the White House. I think he's just now returned to the White House. But, this is, by the way, probably what made Jerry Ford a one-term president, was his getting us out of Vietnam. And that iconic picture of those people hanging on to the wheels of the helicopter, falling off the helicopter as the last helicopter took off from the top of the U.S. Air Force Base in Saigon. Now we've got people falling off airplanes, C-130s, as American planes. It's the exact same thing. And in both cases, it was a failure of our government to protect the people who had been with us. And I get it. I'm guessing that at a certain point, the Biden administration was thinking, how many people do we take out of the country? I mean, if we take 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, 80,000, the number I'm hearing is that there are around 80,000 people who have been directly employed by the United States in the last couple of years, who therefore have targets on their backs. We have taken 2,000 of them out of the country. How did we not take out the rest of them earlier, and their families? How did we not see this coming? Trump announced this almost 2 years ago when he cut the deal with the Taliban over the objections of the Afghan government. He cut the government out of the deal. He made a deal with terrorists. In fact, he asked Pakistan to let their leader out of jail. And we are now reaping what we sowed. And then, of course, go back to 2001. How did all this start? It all started with a criminal act against the United States that George W. Bush decided to treat as an act of war. And he had to go after a country. I mean, who was behind 9/11? Well, it turns out if any country had any involvement in it, and I don't think that we've successfully pinned this on any individual government, but it looks like there were some fairly well-placed people in the Saudi government who had something to do with support of some of the people who were involved in it. But the planning was done in Germany by Mohammed Atta and in Venice, Florida, when Mohammed Atta came to the United States and finally, put the deal together. We've got Atta. He's in prison over this. What did Afghanistan have to do with it? As far as I can tell, nothing. Bin Laden had his little terrorist training camp there. He had 20,000 people go through it over the previous 10 or 15 years. There were about 5,000 people there hanging out with him at the time, although on 9/11 he was in Pakistan getting dialysis. Anyhow, where do we go from here? What do we do with this?